Greetings. My name is Pat Murphy, and I am a botanist plant ecologist who has lived in Boulder for 45 years. I've been following the municipalization issue, and the question on the screen is best evaluated when you review the information I'm about to present. The online documents by City of Boulder are filled with guesses and estimates and waffle words, and there's some information they're just not providing. Knowing the facts is not really possible because I believe we are presented with unprovable and untestable guesses. This presentation looks at the big picture rather than the unknowable. The big picture goal is a reduced carbon footprint. So what is the best case outcome of municipalization? When Boulder acts alone, there really are no significant results, even with the best case outcome. Boulder uses that little slice of the pie, about 3.4% of the generated electricity in the state of Colorado. The large red area is the rest of Colorado. Boulder hopes to achieve about 30% to 50% renewables, so the net change to the Colorado power usage would be about 1% to 1.7%. Statistically non-significant. Let's cover a few fundamentals next. Here are the costs per kilowatt hour for the different sources of energy generation. Coal is the cheapest at about 92% of the cost of wind, 58% of the cost of natural gas, and 28% of the cost of solar. Remember, all these energy sources have their environmental costs. Coal, there's mines, groundwater impacts, surface impacts, power plant emissions, and transportation emissions. Gas, there's fracking, emissions from drilling and accidents, power plant emissions. Remember, gas is about half as dirty as coal, and more recently, reports of earth tremors. Hydro, you have to construct a dam, water pipeline construction, stream modification, and impacts to aquatic migration, connection, inundation, and sedimentation. Wind, bird and bat mortality. Solar, production materials mining and manufacturing emissions. Ultimately, there's going to be the disposal of solar panels. And biomass. That depends on whether it is waste or primary sources like agriculture. Just as one example of the impacts, here is an estimate of the bird mortality caused by wind generation. The American Bird Conservancy reports that the Fish and Wildlife Service estimates that bird mortality ranges from 100,000 to 440,000 birds per year, and by 2030 may rise to 1 million birds per year. All of the energy sources have costs that must be entered into the evaluation of the net benefits. My point is, do not assume that any one of these sources is trouble-free. Let's get back to comparing what Xcel is accomplishing today against what Boulder hopes to accomplish. To quickly review, Boulder at best will change the Colorado carbon footprint by 1 to 2%. What if we compare what Boulder hopes to accomplish, what Xcel is actually achieving today? This graph shows Xcel's energy sources. Xcel already has 19.5% renewables for Colorado, compared to Boulder's hoped for 1% to 1.7% contribution of renewables to Colorado's electricity sourcing. So let's compare Boulder's 20-year plan to manage 3.4% of the Colorado electric usage to Xcel's plan to manage 100%. But first I want to throw some cold water on the idea that Longmont and Fort Collins are shining examples of municipalization. Remember that Xcel is currently using coal for about 58% of their source fuel, Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Fort Collins burns about 66% coal versus Xcel's 58%. And Longmont burns 72% coal versus Xcel's 58%. And both of these cities have an ace in their hand with about 26% and 19% hydro, respectively. Boulder only has about 3% to 2%. Fort Collins and Longmont are coal burners that I believe Boulder does not really want to emulate. So let's get back to comparing Boulder's 20-year plan to managing 3.4% of the Colorado electric usage to Xcel's plan to manage 100%. Xcel's 20-year plan from 2017 to 2037 is at the top, and Boulder's is on the bottom. Note that Xcel is reducing its coal use from 55% to 20%, increasing its natural gas use, and has an approximately stable percentage of renewables. Certainly room for improvement here. However, these numbers need to be adjusted since Xcel has recently added a large block of solar and is ahead of their wind goals. Boulder will continue to use coal, which I found to be surprising, increase then decrease coal use, then increase natural gas use, and increase wind. Boulder eventually, by 2037, wants to have a complete dependency on risky natural gas generation for its baseload, as well as wind. Bad idea 1. So instead of remote coal mine disturbances and power plant emissions that can be measured and if necessary controlled, Boulder will depend on 1,000 soda straws piercing the ground near our homes, open space, and rural areas, emitting gases with potential inevitable groundwater contamination with very little monitoring. And, as more recently reported, potential links to earth tremors. All of Boulder's baseload will depend on natural gas. Bad idea 2. So who is going to get the best price on gas or wind? The huge bulk buyer, Xcel, or the tiny buyer, Boulder? Boulder has no great leverage for purchasing electricity, and it also has no ace in its hand like the large percentage of hydro Longmont and Fort Collins have. Bad idea 3. So what happens if the natural gas approach collapses due to unforeseen, or foreseen but not yet proven, environmental impacts? We have no backup plan for managing our baseload. Oh yeah, and each well uses 3 to 8 million US gallons of chemical-laced water over its lifetime. Perhaps we would need to buy coal-generated electricity from whom? Xcel. In spite of the municipalization proponents' cries, if we tried to change Xcel and PUC, or the Public Utilities Commission, but they just wouldn't listen to us, I am not convinced. How about a plan B? Boulder lobbies legislators, the Colorado Public Utilities Commission, and the people of Colorado with our great ideas. All we have to do is make a 1.5% improvement statewide, and we will equal the Boulder municipalization effort that, in my opinion, is a boondoggle. So now, let's move on to what the true costs of municipalization have been and are estimated to be, to see how that money could have been used to reduce our carbon footprint instead of paying consultants, lawyers, and staff, or creating a redundant bureaucracy. The startup costs alone are estimated to be $34.5 million. This could be the same as a $2,000 solar incentive for 17,400 homes. That could zero out net electric use for over 40% of Boulder's homes. How about just the money that has been or will be spent from 2011 to the end of this year, 2014? What carbon reduction opportunities have we already lost from 2011 to 2014? The millions of dollars already spent have done nothing to reduce our carbon footprint. These three graphs show the current expenses of the municipalization effort so far from 2011 to 2014. The three graphs are the same, but the first shows dollars, the second shows how many homes could have received a $2,000 incentive to install solar, and the third shows the amount of carbon that would have been offset by the solar. The stacked columns start at the bottom with values from 2011, then 2012, then 2013, then 2014. The upper value is the loss of the money that Xcel was contributing to have electric lines put underground in Boulder. But Boulder lost that as a part of the municipalization effort and the rejection of the franchise fee from Xcel. Note that the 2011 and 2012 carbon values over on the lower right are higher because these homes would have had solar for 3 and 2 years respectively by now. I based the carbon reduction on my own home. I've had solar for 3 years, and I use my 3-year average to make these calculations. I use very little electricity compared to the average household, so these are very conservative estimates. So what carbon reduction opportunities are being missed now and in the future? Here are the rest of the costs that will accumulate before day one arrives. The number at the bottom of the columns in the pink box is the combined 2011 to 2014 costs from the previous graph. Then there are the startup costs of $34.8 million, Boulder's $214 million estimate of the cost of acquiring assets and payment of stranded costs, then separation costs of about $10 million, and going concern costs that could easily reach $100 million. I have included an additional $25 million to the stranded costs, since that is much more in line with other estimates. But this could range up to another $122 million. Bob will explain what each of these includes and why the court costs associated with determining each of these may add to the actual amount. When Boulder claims that they don't think they need to pay stranded costs or any of these other costs, I just don't believe it. What I do know is that it will require time and court costs to figure it out. So what do we have here? We have an estimated $397 million spent before day one. 198,540 homes that could have had solar incentives, and 622,347 tons of CO2 that could have been offset. To further help visualize the incredible cost and what else could have been achieved with that money, let's take a more realistic look at the solar incentive option. This estimate is based on a discussion I had with a solar expert. He stated that the rule of thumb is that about 1 in 7 homes has all the conditions to install solar. For example, adequate sunny roof exposure. Here are the population statistics for City of Boulder and Boulder County as well as the U.S. Note the total number of households and the estimated number that have good solar capacities. If just the money spent from 2011 to 2014 were used for solar incentives, 16% of the homes in Boulder could have solar. If the money spent from 2011 to day one were used for solar incentives, 163% of the homes in Boulder County could have solar. That's right, more than all the capable homes in Boulder County. And this does not even include all the huge business rooftops that could use solar. Perhaps it's possible a $3,000 or $4,000 incentive could be used as well. So that is what we have left behind, and will leave behind if we continue with municipalization. Let's look one more time at what Boulder can really achieve. Here is the big footprint we should be working on, not the costly, symbolic, but insignificant outcome of Boulder municipalization. No significant outcome. At what cost? The cost is still poorly defined. And would you agree to buy a car when the seller hasn't given you a price? That is not sanity. Is it vanity?